So for our pizza dough, we use a dry active yeast. You can also use a live yeast culture that needs to stay in your refrigerator, but we prefer just something simple, which is dry active yeast. You can buy this at any supermarket. It's called Red Star, and luckily we're going to use exactly one packet for this recipe. The thing about dry active yeast is it requires warm water and sugar to rise. So we have about a third of our total water warm, 100 degrees. You're going to need a thermometer to check that. You probably just stick your finger in there. It's about the temperature of a hot tub. So we're going to have 2 teaspoons of regular sugar. And as we're stirring that around, we're going to slowly pour in 2 teaspoons of dry active yeast, which is basically 1 packet. Pour it slowly while you're stirring. So all the clumps are gone. And now we're going to wait. Alright, so we've waited about 10 minutes. Our yeast is rising. We have a nice foamy head on the top of it. You don't want to wait too long. You also don't want to start it too early, so anywhere from about 5 to 15 minutes is fine. A lot of it depends on the room temperature. So if you're in a cold kitchen, you're going to want to wait a little bit longer. If you're in a really warm kitchen, you can start the process quicker. We like to use a high gluten flour. Also, could be a bread flour. Try to stay away from an all-purpose flour that has a lower gluten level. That's more for baking pastries or cookies. It'll work too, it's just your dough won't rise as much. The gluten level is directly related to how stretchy your dough will be and also how much it will rise. So we have a very high gluten flour. This is the same flour from Redwood Pizzeria. It's an all-organic flour. Comes from Keith Justo Baking Company in Petaluma. So at first we're going to start with the yeast water. We're going to dump that in. You don't have to use an electric mixer. You could do this by hand, but I don't have a whole lot of experience with it. And this is just room temperature filtered water. We're going to pour that into the yeast cup. The yeast was 6 ounces of 100 degree water. We're going to add that. Then we're going to slowly add our flour on low speed. stopped the mixer. And by the way, it's always okay to stop things. If something happens, if you need to clean up real quick, this process does not need to be nonstop. It can stop if it needs to for short periods of time. So we've stopped the mixer after about a minute. The water has basically all been absorbed, although the dough looks nothing like a ball at this point. Now we're going to want to add our salt. The reason why we don't add the salt earlier is because salt is kind of the opposite of sugar to the yeast. The yeast needs sugar to activate, to become alive, along with hot water. Salt will kill yeast. So what we're allowing to happen here is we're allowing the yeast water to get integrated into the flour before we add the salt so that we don't kill our yeast off. So we're going to start this back up. Very carefully, just kind of slowly pour a little bit of salt. It'll mix itself. And this is the same 2 teaspoon measurement of salt. We're going to let this mix for another 2 minutes. So the last ingredient is going to be the olive oil. So we've waited about 3 minutes of mixing on low speed. You never want to go on a high speed for this. Just try to keep it at 2 or possibly 4 on your mixer. So after 3 minutes, the dough is starting to ball up. Looks like all the ingredients have been properly mixed together. We're going to stop it. We're going to make a little hole in the center and add all of the olive oil into it. We're trying to get the olive oil to incorporate into the center of the dough. You don't want to put it down the sides of the bowl because it just won't absorb into the dough. So we're going to put it right in the middle there. Raise our bowl back up. And we're going to continue mixing this way for about 6-7 more minutes. So that's going to be about 10 minutes total. So it's been about 10 minutes. Actually, it came out really nice. This is my first time doing a batch this particular size, so I had to do some math on all the ratios. And really the most important ratio in making pizza dough is flour to water. Everything else can be a little bit more, a little bit less, but you really do need the right proportion of flour to water to get a dough that is sticky but not too sticky. So you don't want it sticking to your hand. That would mean it's too watery. You also don't want it so dry so that you can't stretch it. So this actually came out really nice. Happy with this. We're gonna put it back into a slightly oiled anything really. This one is really cool because it came with a lid. I wanted to go over really quick the equipment that we have here. This is a digital scale that we use to weigh the flour. It was like 15 bucks at Target. We got this stainless steel bowl which has this cool rubber bottom on it so it doesn't slide around. With a lid, it was like less than 10 bucks at Target. And the mixer we got at Costco. This came with about 4 different attachments. This is a 6-quart mixer and it's 575 watts. This is really kind of the minimum that you're gonna want for pizza dough. Puts a lot of stress, or any sort of bread, puts a lot of stress on your mixer. You could get the one that's a little bit smaller, the 5-quart, that I think is like 450 watts, but I think those ones have plastic gears, and this one has metal gears. This is technically like a professional model, so I highly recommend this one. It also has this cool attachment on the front where you can make your own pasta. It has a grating attachment on here, which basically turns it into like a food processor if you ever, need to shred things or slice a lot of things. So we actually use this a lot for several different cooking projects. It's also got the lift, so in case you have a short cabinet or you have cabinets, you don't have to tilt the head back, so you can keep this under your kitchen cabinets. Fits perfectly, and then the bowl just goes up and down. All right, so we're gonna put the dough ball into the bowl with a little bit of oil, kind of rub it around. It's good to get a little coating of oil on the outside of your dough ball. It doesn't have to be airtight, it just needs to be covered. And we're gonna put it in the fridge for at least 18 hours.